Have you ever wondered why so many spiritual traditions warn against the dangers of love? Why do monks renounce romantic relationships while seeking enlightenment? Why do ascetics isolate themselves in the mountains, far from family ties? For centuries, we have been conditioned to believe that the path to spiritual growth requires abandoning earthly attachments, especially romantic and family love. We have been repeatedly told that to reach the highest realms of consciousness, we must transcend human emotions, including love. This perception is so deeply rooted in our culture that we rarely question it. But is this dichotomy true? Are love and spirituality really opposing forces, irreconcilable in our existential journey? Or could this be one of the greatest illusions we inherited from our ancestors, a false dichotomy that has limited our understanding of what it means to be fully human? Behind this seemingly simple question lies one of the greatest dilemmas of the human condition, and its answer may fundamentally transform the way we live our lives. Today, we are going to challenge this deeply rooted belief and explore a perspective that may seem shocking to many: the idea that love and spirituality, far from being opposites, may be different manifestations of the same fundamental phenomenon. To understand this dilemma, we need to go back thousands of years. In early human communities, spirituality and love were not separate concepts. Paleolithic hunter-gatherers did not distinguish between their connection with nature, their family bonds, and their experience of the sacred. Everything was part of a continuous fabric of existence. When a hunter killed an animal, he performed a ritual to honor its spirit. When a mother breastfed her child, this was simultaneously an act of love and a sacred act that connected generations. Love and the sacred coexisted without contradiction. There was no separation between the mundane and the divine, between carnal love and spiritual devotion. It was only with the rise of agricultural civilizations and their organized religious systems that we began to see this artificial separation emerge. Around 3000 BC, with the development of writing and the first urban civilizations in Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and China, formal religious hierarchies appeared. Priests and scribes began to codify spiritual experiences into sacred texts, established rituals and dogmas. And here something significant happens. Spirituality, which was once a direct and embodied experience, begins to transform into an abstract and intellectualized system. The body, with its desires and passions, begins to be seen as an obstacle to spiritual purity. Love, especially in its erotic dimension, came to be characterized as a force that traps humans to the earth, preventing their ascent to the divine. We see this clearly in Hindu asceticism, where renunciants abandon family and possessions in pursuit of liberation. We see it in early Buddhism, where detachment from all emotional ties is considered essential to achieving nirvana. We see it in Christian monasticism, where celibacy is valued as a superior path of devotion. This separation was not accidental. It served specific social and political purposes. In hierarchical societies, where population control and social stability were primary concerns, restricting and regulating sexual and romantic behavior through religious codes was an effective tool of governance. By elevating celibacy and renunciation as spiritual ideals, religious authorities also consolidated their power over the masses. After all, who could question the moral authority of someone who renounced the pleasures that ordinary people could not resist? The narrative of incompatibility between love and spirituality was not just a metaphysical interpretation, but also an instrument of power. Simultaneously, Western philosophy, particularly after Plato, established a rigid distinction between body and soul, between matter and spirit. Carnal love was relegated to the lower realm of the body, while spiritual love was idealized as the only one worthy of true aspiration. This Platonic dichotomy deeply influenced Christianity and, by extension, all Western thought. Saint Augustine, one of the fathers of the Church, transformed his own journey from libertinism to chastity into an archetypal model of spiritual evolution, further reinforcing the idea that human love is an obstacle to communion with God. This same division appears in different forms in the great Eastern traditions. In Hinduism, the 4 stages of life, ashramas, traditionally end with the phase of sannyasa, where the individual abandons all family ties to dedicate himself exclusively to the spiritual quest. In classical Buddhism, attachment, including romantic and family love, is identified as the root of suffering. Even in Taoism, which in many ways celebrates the naturalness of the body, we find texts in subtle but profound ways. Even in modern spiritual circles, we often hear that emotional attachment is an obstacle to enlightenment. Contemporary gurus warn their followers about the dangers of losing themselves in relationships, suggesting that the true spiritual seeker must transcend such worldly connections. The idea that we cannot serve both human and divine love simultaneously remains deeply rooted in our collective psyche. But now we arrive at a crucial moment in human history where this ancient dichotomy is being fundamentally questioned. Modern neuroscience is revealing that our deepest experiences of love and our highest experiences of spiritual transcendence activate similar regions in the brain. Both involve the temporary dissolution of the ego boundaries that normally separate us from others and the world. Both deep love and mystical experience involve a state of surrender and connection that transcends our isolated individuality. Brain imaging studies show that during states of deep meditation and during moments of intense loving connection, we see decreased activity in the posterior parietal lobe, the area of the brain responsible for creating our sense of physical separation from the environment. In other words, both love and spirituality can lead us to transcend the boundaries of the isolated ego that normally define our experience. This suggests that at the most fundamental level, these experiences may not be opposites, but variations of the same basic human phenomenon. Our ability to transcend the limits of the separate self and experience connection with something greater. Historically, this unifying perspective was not completely absent. Mystical traditions within major religions often recognized the deep connection between love and spirituality. In Islamic Sufism, human love, is seen as a reflection and a path to divine love. Sufi poets like Rumi regularly use erotic metaphors to describe union with the divine. In Hasidic Judaism, the joy of conjugal love is considered a form of spiritual devotion. In Tantric Hinduism, sexual union is transformed into a sacrament that can lead to enlightenment. Even in Christianity, mystics like Saint John of the Cross and Saint Teresa of Avila employed intensely erotic language to describe their experiences of religious ecstasy. So, what is really happening here? Why do so many established spiritual traditions insist on the incompatibility of love and spirituality, while mystical currents within those same traditions often see them as deeply intertwined? The answer may lie in a more subtle understanding of what truly constitutes love and spirituality in their highest forms. Perhaps the problem is not love itself, but certain forms of possessive and egocentric attachment that we often mistake for love. Love, in its most mature and evolved expression, is not possessive or exclusive. It does not seek to control or dominate. It does not depend on the other to fill an internal void or validate one's own worth. True love is expansive, generous, and liberating. It is characterized by the same quality of open presence and acceptance that we find in the highest forms of spiritual consciousness. Likewise, perhaps the problem is not spirituality itself, but certain escapist and life-denying interpretations that we confuse with authentic spirituality. True spirituality does not require fleeing from the world or denying our humanity. It does not demand that we repress our capacity for connection and intimacy. In its most integrated and mature expression, spirituality allows us to fully participate in life, including its relational and emotional dimensions, while maintaining a broader awareness that is not limited by narrow identifications. Seen from this perspective, the apparent contradiction between love and spirituality begins to dissolve. Both, in their highest forms, involve an expansion of consciousness beyond the limits of the separate ego. Both involve a movement from separation to union, from fear to openness, from contraction to expansion. Both have the potential to free us from the prison of self-preoccupation and open us to a broader, interconnected reality. Technology and modernity have added new layers of complexity to this ancient question. We live in an era of unprecedented digital connectivity, yet many experience increasing levels of isolation and loneliness. We have more communication tools than any previous generation, yet we often feel less truly seen and understood. Romantic love has been simultaneously mythologized by popular culture and reduced to dating app algorithms. Spirituality has been commodified and packaged as just another lifestyle product for individual consumption. Amid this confusing landscape, many people are turning to simplified versions of both love and spirituality as quick fixes for a deeper existential malaise. Some seek salvation in romantic relationships, hoping that the perfect partner will heal all their wounds and fill all their internal emptiness, an expectation that inevitably leads to disillusionment. Others turn to spiritual practices as a form of escapism, hoping to transcend the complexities and challenges of human relationships, only to discover that these complexities follow them even in the most isolated retreats. Artificial intelligence is beginning to present new challenges in this domain. As we develop increasingly sophisticated AI companions designed to simulate empathy and understanding, we are entering uncharted territory regarding the boundaries between human connection and technological simulation. Some people already report forming deep emotional bonds with AI assistants, while others fear that these artificial connections may atrophy our ability for authentic engagement with other humans. The line between authentic spirituality and technological escapism is also becoming blurrier, with meditation apps and virtual reality experiences promising altered states of consciousness at the touch of a button. These developments raise profound questions about the nature of love and spirituality in the digital era. What does it mean to love in an age where intimacy is increasingly mediated by technology? How can we cultivate authentic spirituality in a world of infinite digital distractions? These are not abstract questions, but concrete dilemmas that shape our everyday experience as humans in the 21st century. I want to pause for a moment to ask, do you also feel this tension in your life? This apparent contradiction between your search for deep connection with other humans and your journey of spiritual growth? I know that for many of us, this tension is rarely articulated, remaining as an underground conflict that shapes our choices and relationships. Perhaps you have felt that you need to choose between dedicating yourself to a spiritual path or diving fully into human love with all its joys and complications. If this duality resonates with you, know that you are not alone. Share in the comments, I feel this conflict between love and spirituality when your experience may help others recognize and navigate this tension in their own lives. Sometimes, simply naming these internal dilemmas is the first step toward integrating them. Let us now return to the contradictions and paradoxes involved in this issue. One of the central ironies is that both spiritual traditions and romantic visions of love often promise the same thing: transcendence, meaning, liberation from suffering, union with something greater than ourselves. Both are presented as paths to overcome the fundamental alienation that seems to lie at the core of the human condition. Yet historically, they are often presented as mutually exclusive, as if we had to choose between the vertical transcendence of spirituality and the horizontal transcendence of human love. This apparent contradiction points to something profound about the nature of our search. Perhaps we are not really seeking two different things when we pursue love and when we pursue spiritual enlightenment. Perhaps we are looking for the same thing, a way to transcend the limitations of our separate existence, to overcome the sense of isolation that comes with self-conscious human awareness, to reconnect with a wholeness from which we feel separated. If that is the case, then the real question is not whether love and spirituality are compatible, but how they can be integrated into a more holistic approach to human development. Rather than seeing these dimensions as competing forces, pulling us in opposite directions, we could see them as complementary aspects of a unified path toward a fuller humanity. What might such an integration look like in practice? Perhaps it begins with the recognition that true love and true spirituality are both practices of opening and expanding consciousness. Both involve cultivating the capacity to be fully present, to see beyond projections and expectations, to offer radical acceptance. Both require that we confront and work through our fears, defenses, and conditioning patterns. Both invite us on a journey of self-knowledge and self-transformation. In practice, this could mean bringing the same quality of mindfulness that we cultivate in meditation to our intimate relationships. It could mean seeing our partners not merely as sources of personal gratification, but as other beings on their own spiritual journey, worthy of respect and reverence. It could mean recognizing that the challenges and frustrations that inevitably arise in close relationships are not obstacles to our spiritual growth, but opportunities for it, revealing aspects of ourselves that might remain hidden in the solitude of individual spiritual practice. Conversely, it could mean bringing the qualities we develop through human love, such as compassion, empathy, and the capacity for intimacy, to our spiritual search. It could mean recognizing that our connections with other human beings can be portals to transcendent and sacred experiences. It could mean understanding that our ability to love and be loved is not separate from our capacity to experience the divine, but an integral aspect of it. This integrated path is not easy. It demands that we face the challenges of both love and spirituality without seeking shortcuts or simplistic solutions. It demands that we stay present with the complexities, ambiguities, and paradoxes inherent in the human condition, rather than seeking refuge in dogmatic answers or escapist fantasies. It demands that we develop the capacity to live with open questions instead of rushing toward premature conclusions. On a collective level, this integration of love and spirituality has potentially profound implications for how we organize our communities and societies. Many of the crises we face today, from political polarization to environmental degradation, can be understood as manifestations of a more fundamental fragmentation in our consciousness, an inability to integrate the vertical and horizontal dimensions of our human experience. Spirituality without love can easily become arid, abstracted, and disconnected from the realities of human life. It can lead to a kind of spiritual narcissism where the pursuit of personal enlightenment becomes just another form of self-preoccupation. It can result in religious communities and institutions that, in the name of transcendent principles, perpetuate power hierarchies, exclusion, and even abuse. On the other hand, love without spirituality can easily degenerate into attachment, possessiveness, and codependency. It can become a sophisticated form of self-expansion where the other is valued primarily for how they make us feel or what they add to our identity. It can lead to relationships that, while emotionally intense, lack a deeper foundation of shared meaning and purpose. The integration of love and spirituality offers a path beyond these pitfalls. It suggests the possibility of a form of human existence that is simultaneously deeply engaged with the world of human relationships and capable of a broader perspective that transcends immediate egoic concerns. It points to the possibility of communities that are both intimately connected and oriented towards something that transcends their particular boundaries. Historically, we have seen glimpses of this integration in various contexts. We see it in monastic communities that combine individual contemplation with a strong emphasis on communal life and service to others. We see it in certain indigenous traditions where spirituality is intimately intertwined with family and community relationships. We see it in contemporary movements that seek to unite social activism with contemplative practices, recognizing that personal transformation and social transformation are inseparable. These historical experiences suggest that the integration of love and spirituality is not merely an abstract ideal, but a concrete possibility that has already been, at least partially, realized in diverse cultural contexts. They offer models and inspiration for our own efforts of integration, even as we recognize that each generation must discover this integration on its own terms, responding to the unique challenges and opportunities of its time. Looking to the future, it is possible that we are on the threshold of a significant transformation in our collective understanding of the relationship between love and spirituality. As old religious and social structures continue to dissolve, there is an unprecedented opportunity for new syntheses that transcend traditional dichotomies. Globalization and the internet are allowing dialogue and cross-fertilization between spiritual and philosophical traditions that were previously isolated. Science is offering new perspectives on the neurobiology of human connection and transcendent experience. The planetary crisis is catalyzing a growing recognition of the fundamental interconnectedness of all life. Amid these developments, we are seeing the emergence of new approaches that seek to integrate insights from diverse traditions with contemporary understandings of psychology, neuroscience, and complex systems. These approaches often recognize the profound interweaving of our capacities for interpersonal love, universal compassion, and transcendent consciousness. They suggest that optimal human development involves cultivating these capacities simultaneously rather than privileging one over the other. If we are indeed on the threshold of such a transformation, how do we navigate it wisely and effectively? How do we integrate love and spirituality into our individual and collective lives in ways that are genuinely emancipatory rather than merely repackaging all dichotomies in new language? How do we avoid both the false transcendence that denies our humanity and the false humanism that denies our transcendent capacity? These are not questions that can be answered definitively or once and for all. They are questions that each individual and each community must explore through ongoing inquiry and lived experimentation. They are questions that invite us on a journey of discovery that is simultaneously deeply personal and inherently collective. What we can say with some confidence is that the journey to integrate love and spirituality is one of the most important we can undertake, both for our individual flourishing and for the future of our species. In a world characterized by fragmentation, polarization, and converging crises, the capacity to unite the horizontal and vertical dimensions of human experience may be not only personally transformative, but collectively vital. Returning to the initial question, Are love and spirituality incompatible? The answer that emerges from this exploration is a clear and unequivocal no. Not only are they not incompatible, but in their highest and most integrated forms, they are complementary expressions of the same fundamental human capacity to transcend the limits of the separate ego and experience connection with something greater. The apparent contradiction between them is not inherent to their nature, but an artifact of specific historical interpretations that served particular cultural and political agendas. Recognizing this does not diminish the real challenges involved in integrating love and spirituality into our lives. It does not magically remove the tensions that may arise between different aspects of our human experience. It does not offer a shortcut through the hard work of self-knowledge, relational growth, and spiritual seeking. What it offers is a more unified perspective that can guide us on this complex journey and help us avoid the pitfalls of fragmented and unbalanced approaches. In the end, perhaps the greatest irony is that the same spiritual systems that often warned against the dangers of love also identified love in its most expansive and universal form as the supreme fulfillment of the spiritual journey. God is love, declares the Christian tradition. Love is the religion and the faith, writes the Sufi poet Rumi. May all beings be happy, recites the Buddhist practitioner in their loving kindness meditation. These are not linguistic coincidences, but recognitions of the fundamental truth we have been exploring, that love, in its highest and most mature expression, is not an obstacle to spiritual realization, but its very essence. If you found value in these reflections on the integration of love and spirituality and feel that they touched something you have experienced in your own life, know that you are not alone on this journey. There is a whole community of people who, like you, are navigating the complex terrain of heart and spirit, seeking ways to honor both dimensions of their humanity without sacrificing either. By subscribing to this channel, you will connect with that community and gain regular access to explorations that seek to illuminate the existential challenges we all face in these extraordinary times. Each week, we delve together into another aspect of what it means to be human today, seeking perspectives that can help us live with more wisdom, presence, and wholeness. Join us on this ongoing journey of discovery and transformation. Subscribe so that we can continue this essential conversation about how to integrate all dimensions of our humanity into a more coherent and meaningful whole. Love and spirituality, far from being opposing forces in our lives, can be understood as different facets of the same fundamental human impulse toward connection and transcendence. When wisely integrated, they reinforce and enrich one another, leading to a form of human existence that is simultaneously more fully embodied and more deeply aware. This integration is not a fixed destination to be reached, but an ongoing journey to be lived, moment by moment, relationship by relationship, practice by practice. It is a journey worth undertaking, not only for the sake of our own fulfillment, but for the sake of a world that desperately needs human beings capable of uniting love and wisdom, compassion and clarity, engagement and transcendence. It is a journey that ultimately does not take us away from our humanity toward some purely spiritual realm, nor limit us only to human concerns, but invites us into a fuller humanity that is in itself an expression of the sacred.
So great to meet you. I was fangirling backstage because I'm such a huge fan. You know, I was telling Yuval that I was one of your publicists for Sapiens. I bought several copies of that book. I would give them out to people and just that sort of thing. They're always so exciting. You're so granular in the way you talk about things that we kind of take for granted, you know. In this new book, Nexus, A Brief History of Information Networks from the Stone Age to AI, it's real fascinating talking about information. I wanted to start with this. I know this is a tough question, and you even admit in the book that it's tough. What exactly is information? How do we define that?
So many people think erroneously that information is truth, or information is the raw material of truth. You get lots of information, you analyze it, you get truth. And it isn't. Most of information is junk. Most of information is not the truth. What really defines information is connection. This is why the book is called Nexus, connection.
Right.
Because what information really does is to connect a lot of individuals, a lot of separate humans, entities, into a network. It's a glue. And you can connect, sometimes you can connect things together with the truth, but in many, many occasions, you can use fiction and fantasy and lie and illusions to also connect lots of people together into a state, an army, a corporation, a religion, whatever. To give just one example, if you think, for instance, about visual information, about portraits, about images, paintings. So if you think, what is the most famous portrait, the most common portrait in the world? What is the most famous face in history? It's the face of Jesus. You have billions and billions of images, portraits of Jesus created over the last 2,000 years. They are like everywhere on the planet, in churches, cathedrals, private homes, schools, government offices, and not a single one of them is true.
Right.
All of them 100%.
The Swedish Jesus, right?
The Swedish Jesus,
Right.
exactly.
We all know Jesus was black.
He came from Scandinavia. And the thing is that, I mean, we just have, there is no portrait from his lifetime. If anybody even bothered, you know, he's a small provincial teacher helping people, curing the sick in a small province of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, raising people from the dead,
Raising
stuff like that.
the usual stuff.
Yeah, water in the wine. I like all the magic tricks, actually. Yeah.
And we don't know if anybody even bothered to draw a portrait of him. If they did, nothing survived. In the Bible, there is not a single word about how the man actually looked like. There is one sentence describing what he wore, his clothes, but nothing about whether he was tall or short, fat or thin, black hair, blonde hair, bald, nothing.
Right.
Everything we have is just coming out of the imagination of artists that lived centuries and sometimes thousands of years after him. Like one of the most famous images of Jesus, like the Scandinavian Jesus, was made by an American artist in 1940 to give to soldiers and so forth in the Second World War. And it became, according to some statistics, I'm not sure about it exactly, according to some statistics, the most kind of successful painting of the 20th century in terms of how many copies there are.
So Jesus is basically Bing Crosby, basically. I mean, that's pretty much the image.
Yeah, it's the image. I mean, if you compare the real man to the story about the man, to the image about the man, which is mostly fiction created long after he was dead, I mean, the image is far more powerful. And it's not necessarily bad, of course. You can use it to give hope to people. You can use it to encourage people to be charitable, to help one another. So I'm not saying that fiction is necessarily bad.
Right.
I mean, we are in Los Angeles, you know, the capital city of fiction, in the world.
Exactly.
So we shouldn't trash fiction. But also.
Oh, we can trash it here.
But also, I just came from New York, which is another capital city of fiction in the world, because money is also fiction.
Yeah.
The biggest storytellers in the world, in the end, they are not in LA, they're not in Hollywood, they're in Wall Street. They tell the really powerful fictions.
Yeah.
And it works. I mean, again, there are some negative aspects, positive aspects, but what you can't argue is about how successful it is in connecting people.
Yeah.
You think about the USA today, maybe what is the last thing that everybody in the United States still agree on is the dollar.
Right.
Like Republicans and Democrats can't agree about anything, basically, like who won the last elections. They still agree on the value of a dollar.
Yeah.
And even though it's just a fiction, I mean, the dollars, they have no objective value.
Yeah, if you're on a desert island, a coconut's more valuable than a dollar.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's fast. Now, so information is valuable because it connects people, right? But it's not just, it exists as an objective truth, right? So like can animals get information, or what do they get, when they absorb an objective truth? That's not information, that's something.
But animals also, of course, communicate, and they pass information one to the other. But the ability, I mean, there are several types of information in the world. So you have objective truth, facts about the world, which, if an asteroid comes from outer space to hit Earth or to hit the dinosaurs, the fact that nobody knows about it and nobody believes it, it doesn't matter, it's still true.
Right.
That's objective. Then you have the subjective area of existence, which are things that exist in the mind of just one individual. Like if I'm in pain, I feel the pain, it's true for me, nobody else in the universe feels it. Even if I tell you about it, it doesn't matter if you believe it or not, you don't feel it, only I feel the pain.
Or if you thought someone was eating the dogs and the cats and the pets, like.
That's the third kind of information. That's the intersubjective. I mean, so you have objective,
yes.
You have subjective, then you have the intersubjective.
Okay, what's
the intersubjective realm? This is things that exist in the communication network between people. So this is where you find the image of Jesus, and this is where you find the US dollar, and this is where you find the people eating dogs and cats.
Right.
It's something that is not objectively true, but it's not just the fantasy of a single individual or the feeling, only I feel it. It's in the communication, in the information network between all of us, or some of us. If enough people believe it, if enough people talk about it, it connects. Again, even if we continue with these dogs and cats, you had maybe the most important conversation in the world meant to help the citizens of the United States decide who would control the nuclear weapons that could destroy the world.
Exactly.
And the only thing that most people remember from this hour of debate was the dogs and cats.
Welcome to America. That's the only thing that's important, honestly.
But again, I mean, I don't know if it was on purpose or not.
Sure.
But in terms of kind of PR, even if he didn't think about it in advance, Donald Trump, it was a very smart move. Because you can say, I mean, in politics and in much of life, the key question is what are people talking about?
Right.
What is the subject of the conversation? What people say, what people think is less important than deciding the subject of the conversation. Now, if people in the US, for instance, would talk about abortion, this would be the main subject of conversation, Harris wins. If people talk about immigration, it doesn't matter what they say. If this is the subject of conversation, then this is very much in favor of Trump. Because you can think about like a typical conversation afterwards. Somebody says, he said that they're eating the dogs and cats. And then the other person replies, but it's not true. It's just a fiction. And then the Trump supporter says, yes, well, this is maybe exaggerated, but there are still really important problems with immigration. Exactly. And they start talking about immigration.
Right.
So
the information he's getting across is there's a problem.
Yes, the information that really gets across is that there is a problem with immigration. So maybe it's not the dogs and cats, but this is still the subject people are talking about.
Right.
And again, this is how to control the conversation is one of the most important things in the world. And when you look at the history of who controls the conversation, so what's interesting at the present moment we are now living in is that for the first time in history, it is non-humans controlling the conversation. And I don't mean the cats and dogs.
Sure.
I mean the algorithms, the AIs.
Is it controlling it because it's telling us what we should be interested in, or is it just giving us those things that we should be interested in? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it. It doesn't matter how exactly you define it, but if you think even today, who decides what's on the front page of the New York Times? It's a human being. Who decides what will be on the main news, on Fox Television News or CNN News? It's a human being. It's a human news editor. But who decides what will be at the top of the Facebook newsfeed? What would be the next video you will see on TikTok? It's not a human being. An algorithm decides what people's attention will be focused on. And this is one of the, there was a lot of talk about AI replacing humans in different jobs, automating jobs. And people thought, they will replace the taxi drivers. They will replace the textile workers. One of the first jobs they automated is news editors.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Because again, some of the most important, powerful people in the world used to be news editors. Like Lenin, before he was dictator of the Soviet Union, his one job basically was editor of a newspaper, Iskra. Benito Mussolini, before he was dictator of Italy, he was editor of a newspaper, Avanti. And this was kind of the ladder of promotion. Yeah. Journalist, newspaper editor, dictator of the country.
I see a horrible pattern developing here.
And he was not a journalist.
Oh, okay,
he was a painter. He was originally a painter, not a very successful one.
Right.
And now also the painters are being replaced. So that's a worrying pattern.
Yeah,
I mean,
love
both.
AI was supposed to give us free time and allow us time to paint, and now it's doing the painting and the art stuff, and we have to do all the work. It's just upside down. You talk about technology a lot in the book too, and it's interesting how technology doesn't necessarily make things better, right? That's not a straight line like you think it would. Like you think we would get better information, like books, the invention of books. Talk about how the invention of books changed the way information was synthesized, I guess, or how it changed things.
So there are two important points in the history of books. You have the actual invention of the book, and then after a couple of thousand years, you have the invention of the printing press. So if you look first at books, somebody needed to invent the book. Writing was invented in ancient Mesopotamia, what is today Iraq, about 5,000 years ago. But for thousands of years afterwards, people were writing a lot of documents, but not books. I mean, a book is a very special type of document.
Yeah.
It's a very long document, lots of chapters, or if it's a cookbook, lots of recipes, or lots of stories, or whatever. It has many copies spread in many different places that are all the same, which is basically what today people try to do with blockchain, for the folks who know the technology. And this was, in a way, revolutionary, because you can get exactly the same information to a lot of people spread over a vast territory.
Right.
So when you see the rise, for instance, of holy books, like the Bible, the idea there, you can, for instance, limit the power of the king, of the emperor, by having many copies of the same holy book in many different places. Because previously you have a temple of the great god in the middle of the capital city, and the king controls the temple, so the king can tell you anything he wants about, God said this, and the goddess said that.
He was the only one that had that channel.
He was controlling the kind of communication channel to heaven.
Right.
And then people came up with the idea, let's have the holy book, which was supposed to democratize the communication with the gods. Because if you have lots of identical copies of the same holy book in lots of places, the king can't just change what's in it. He can change the copy he has in the palace, but there are thousands of other copies which are supposed to be identical, And it's easy to check and say, no, this is not what it says in the book. So this sounds a wonderful idea. We should have democratized power.
Right.
But then there are always problems with technologies. And the book is a technology. We don't think about religions like Christianity or Judaism or Islam as being based on a technology, but they're based on a technology, on a book.
Yeah, things had to be put together in a certain way, and people had to make decisions about what would be in that book, which makes a decision about the religion itself.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
Once you have this idea, let's have one holy book everywhere, then the question comes, but what will be in it?
Right.
Now,
what recipes get in the book?
what recipes in the cookbook? Now, if it just came down from heaven, no problem.
Yes.
But it didn't.
Right.
So you basically had a committee.
Slow down now. no, just kidding.
No, I mean, we know, we have documents from the period. I mean,
Sure.
Jesus never read the Bible, the New Testament. It didn't exist in his time.
Yeah.
The New Testament, as we know it, it's 27 texts. Some of them are attributed to St. Paul. Some of them are the Gospels. Some of them are, letters written by other disciples. And in the first centuries of Christianity, there was no New Testament. Nothing. We have lots of evidence from the first centuries of Christianity, no New Testament. There are lots and lots of different texts. Gospels, stories about Jesus, letters of different people, prayers, all kinds of prophecies.
It's kind of where the expression "spread the good word," I think, really comes from, because that's all they could do was talk about it, right? Yeah.
They talked a lot, they wrote, and there was a flood of information. And at a certain point, people said, well, I mean, we don't know what to read. What are the good books? What are the reliable books? Which are less reliable? And eventually, about 400 years after Jesus, in the late 4th century, they have a big convention, a committee, in the city of Carthage, which is today in Tunisia, in North Africa, where bishops and theologians, mostly from North Africa, convene to North Africa was a very important center of Christianity in those days. And they convene to decide what will be in the recommendation list. It started as a recommendation list, the same way like you have so many TV series on Netflix. You don't know what to watch.
Yeah.
So you have these like top 10 series to watch this winter.
Right.
So it was the same. It was top 27 books, the texts every Christian should read.
It's like you're at the end of the Gospel of Matthew, and then the Gospel of Mark is loading up as it's finishing.
Something like that.
Right.
And then they were not the authors of the book. Different people wrote different texts. They were the editors.
Right.
They decided what will be in the recommendation list.
And they just decided themselves they had the authority to do this.
They had the
It wasn't like
authority.
they were given the authority. They just took that authority, right?
And to give you just one example of a key discussion, of a key choice they made. At the time, there was a very popular text, early Christian text, called The Acts of Paul and Thecla. This was a text describing the activities of St. Paul and his female disciple, Thecla, who performed miracles and preached to people and baptized, and she was a leader of the church, and this text was very popular at the time, and it was seen as evidence that women can be leaders in the church and can be on the same level with men.
There were many women at the time that were actually leaders in the church. Yeah.
And then there was another text, a letter from the same St. Paul, which scholars believe was actually forged more than 100 years after he was dead. A letter from St. Paul to a disciple of St. Paul called Timothy, and in which St. Paul says that women should not be leaders, they should keep silent and obey the men, and their salvation would come from having children and taking care of them and obeying the men, basically. And the committee in Carthage decided to leave the Acts of Paul and Thecla out, which is why I guess most people here in the audience never heard of it.
Right.
But the letter to Timothy got in, and this is the first epistle to Timothy, which is like in billions of Bibles all over the world. And this is the power of editors.
Yeah.
So this is the invention of the book. And now let's jump 1,000 years to Gutenberg bringing print technology from China to Europe in the middle of the 15th century and the print revolution.
And one of the distinctions, before you talk about that, because this is interesting too, is that just because you had a book and the other book was a copy of that, it doesn't mean that was a direct copy or that it was exactly the same.
Right.
And so, just like telling stories, you know, an 8th generation book might be very different in some aspects of it. Also, people may have made intentional changes if they wanted to, because who's going to check it, right? So the printing press is a revolution in many ways because it gets rid of that.
It gets rid of the mistakes or the intentional changes.
Right.
And it also makes it far, far cheaper. Like previously, if you want to copy the Bible or anything else, you need a person who, writing by hand, everything, every single letter in every single copy, somebody has to write by hand. Whereas with print, one time, yes, you need to do this big work of putting all the blocks of print at one time.
Right.
Once you have them, you can print as many copies as you like. You automated it, made it much, much cheaper. So you have an explosion of book production. And many people think that this was what ignited the scientific revolution. And you go to places like Silicon Valley today, and you talk with them about the dangers of information technology and algorithms and AIs, you can be almost certain that at a certain point in the conversation, they will mention the print revolution, and they will say, look, how wonderful print was. The printing press brought us the scientific revolution. And this is just not true. The printing press did contribute to the scientific revolution, but it took almost 200 years from the middle of the 15th century with print technology until the flowering of the scientific revolution in the 17th century with people like Newton and Leibniz and so forth.
Right.
And in between, in those 200 years, Europe had the worst wave of wars of religion and the worst wave of witch hunts in its history. And the printing press contributed a lot to these waves of basically craziness and violence. Because the most, again, most information is junk, not the truth. The truth is a very costly and rare kind of information. The truth is often complicated, and people want simple things. The truth is often boring. You know, all these mathematical equations that Copernicus finds out about the planets in astronomy. Very few people read Copernicus in the 16th century. The big bestsellers of the period were extremist religious tracts and witch hunting manuals.
Yeah.
Like, to give one very famous example.
Sounds practical.
Yeah, everybody needs it at home, right?
I mean, you got to know how to catch a witch.
Yeah, how to identify and catch witches. So again, one of the very first, very shortly after the invention of print, one of the very first bestsellers of early modern Europe was a book called The Hammer of the Witches, Malleus Maleficarum, which it started, again, there was this, in the Middle Ages, they hardly hunted witches. Contrary to this kind of popular image of Middle Ages, witch hunting, medieval European, they didn't think much about witches.
Too much plague going on.
Yeah, other things to worry about. They knew, okay, there are some witches maybe in the village. They can make you love potions. If your cow goes lost, you can go to the witch. She will help you find your cow. Sometimes they can poison somebody, but it's not a big deal.
I love that. Witches, oh, hey, it's a witch. Hey.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Part of the social fabric.
Yes.
And then, around the time Gutenberg invents the print, a conspiracy theory arises that actually all the witches in the world are part of a single conspiracy led by Satan, which aims to completely destroy human civilization. And one of the first people, at first it was a very small, only few people believed in it. And one of the first people who believed in it was called Heinrich Kramer. And he started a do-it-yourself witch hunt in what is today Austria in the Alps.
Of course.
And arrested, he had these very strange sexual fantasies. He was one of the people who said that most witches were women and that it was driven by powerful sexual urges. And the church actually suppressed it. They said this person is crazy, and they released the women he arrested, and they drove him out of the province. And he took revenge through the printing press. He wrote this book, The Hammer of the Witches, and he printed it. And it was now easy to print because of the printing press. And this sold like it was, again, one of the first big bestsellers.
Right.
To understand why, I'll give just one example from the book. There is a chapter about the ability of witches to steal penises from men. And it brings evidence, Heinrich Kramer.
How do you know you're good at that is my question. You know, like,
At what? At stealing?
Yeah.
They have collections. No. I mean, it brings, for instance, the story of a man who wakes up in the morning and discovers that his penis is gone.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Lorena Bobbitt.
So
yeah, right.
He suspects the local witch.
Right.
She must have done it. So he goes to the local witch.
Wait, I have to stop here. It's like, honey, do you know where I put my penis?
Exactly.
Just can't. Do you think I should check with the witch? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay, go ahead. I had to do the bit. Yeah, go ahead.
Goes to the witch, and she says, okay, I'll give you back your penis. And she says,
no way.
Go out, you see this tree, climb up the tree.
Wow.
He climbs up the tree. At the top of the tree, he finds a bird's nest where the witch kept all the penises she stole from different men in the community. And she says, okay, you can take yours.
Yeah.
And
Make sure you choose the right one. Well, I don't know. This one looks pretty good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He chooses the biggest one.
I'll just act out the bits. Yeah. I'll act out the bits, Yuval. You just tell me what they are.
So he takes the biggest one.
Right.
And then the witch shouts to him, no, you can't take this one. This one belongs to the parish priest.
Right.
So,
Then a brother comes and says, hey, man, where's my dick? Somebody took it.
So
Right.
you can understand why this book sold a few more copies than Copernicus's mathematical equations about how the moon and Mars move around in the sky.
He should have had missing penises in that book, and it would have
Yeah.
been better. The other thing is that it's funny, when you put a lie in print, it does something to that lie. Like, people don't treat it the same. I remember Bob Saget, was a great comedian. He had a great line where he would say a ridiculous thing. And he would say, no, really, I read that. No, really, I wrote it down and I read that. You know, I believe everything I read, you know, was the thing. And I always thought that was a great line because he's right. If you tell someone you read that, you know, it's like somehow it makes it more believable to be true. So the fact that he put it in print, that's what's interesting to me, that made it true.
I mean, especially,
Right.
let's try to go back. It's the 15th century. I mean, for many people around, this is just the very early days of the print revolution. For many people around, the only book they ever saw in their life was the Bible. And there is a feeling that books are not just true, books are holy. And suddenly you have print, it's become much cheaper and easier, and you have this Hammer of the Witches, but it's a book. I mean, you grow up like venerating the Bible.
Right.
And you know, this is a book, it's written in a book, it's not some kind of rumor you hear in the village.
Right.
So it's very powerful. Now again, it all sounds very funny until you realize the consequences. Because the consequences was tens of thousands of people being tortured and killed in the most horrendous ways in the great European witch hunting craze. Again, to give just one example, in Munich, southern Germany, there was a famous case. They arrested an entire family, the Pappenheimer family, accused them all of being witches. Again, according to what's written in this witch hunting manual.
Right.
And so you have a father, mother, 3 children, youngest age 10 years old. And to prove that they are witches, they torture them because this is what the Hammer of the Witches recommend. I mean, the witches, to get the truth out of them, you have to torture them.
Right.
And they start with the 10-year-old boy, because he is the weakest link. And you can still, if you go to the archives in Munich, you can still read the protocol of the interrogation. And they torture a 10-year-old boy until he admits that his mother was a witch. And this is how they break the family. They all confess under horrific torture to poisoning people and summoning hailstorms and being in witches' Sabbath. And again, they had this crazy idea that the witches come together in huge gatherings and have sexual orgies and kill children and eat them and drink their blood and all that. And And comes to America, the Salem witch hunts.
Right.
This is where it originated. And this is a very important lesson for today, because the same thing happened with the internet and social media. Almost more than 300 years after Salem, there are millions of Americans today who basically believe that there is a worldwide conspiracy led by Satan to destroy human civilization, that people gather in orgies and exploit and kill. There are millions of Americans, including even, at least according to some reports, in Congress.
Right.
QAnon and all that, this is what they believe.
Yeah, I think they believe Democrats eat children or drink their blood or something
And
like that.
this comes from, it's not a new, there are very few completely new stories in history.
Right.
It all comes from somewhere. So it's amazing to think that 300 years after the Salem witch hunts, you see the same thing again in America. And it also, to some extent, is because of a new information revolution.
Yeah.
That now it's very easy to spread these things with all the algorithms and so forth on social media. The idea that just by making it easier to spread information, the truth will spread, again and again in history we learn this is not the case.
Is that true?
The truth, again, it's costly. You have to work hard to find evidence, research, like how do I know something about the Pappenheimer family in Munich? You need to know German. You need to travel to Munich to go to the archives to read this thing. This is expensive.
Right.
To write fiction, you don't need anything. You just write the first thing that comes to your mind. And the truth is often complicated, whereas fiction can be made as simple and also as funny, as entertaining, as frightening as you would like it to be.
Is that why conspiracy theories catch on so much more than the truth? Because they appeal to maybe a part of the brain that gives people endorphins from those things, because so many have persisted for so long. Racism is in that category, too, of a conspiracy theory, something made up that makes people feel a certain way, whether it's hatred or whatever, or putting people in a box and that sort of thing. Where does that emanate from? Why is that so easy for humans to believe that kind of information?
Because, it's a combination of two things. On the one hand, it's cheap. If you invent some racist theory, you don't need to spend the time, the money, the effort to look for the evidence. You just write whatever you want. And then it can be very appealing, at least to some people, to believe in it.
Yeah.
So the truth is often not just complicated, the truth is often painful. The truth is often unattractive. From the level of a single individual, this is why people go to therapy. Because if it was so nice to know the truth about ourselves, we wouldn't need therapists. We go sometimes to years of therapy until we can acknowledge some of the painful things about our life that we would rather forget. That we would rather not acknowledge. And this goes all the way to entire nations that there are skeletons and sometimes cemeteries in the closets of nations that they don't want to recognize.
Yeah.
So, and again, if you want the truth, you have to deal with it. If you want fiction, you can just make all these things disappear.
Yeah, one of the things that's interesting too, there's so many, this is what I mean about granular. You talk about bureaucracy in your book, which I wouldn't think that would be a thing. Like, there's so many words we take for granted, And, but when you go into it, even thinking about your family and World War II and how bureaucracy was used for people to hate Jews, if you don't have the right papers, you're not in the right place in town. There's so many ways that bureaucracies can mess with the truth too and have control over, be the entity that controls the truth as well, right? With information, with just basic information, things that you would think would be innocent, like a piece of paper.
Yeah, bureaucracy is like sorcery of information. That with a single piece of paper, you can save or destroy a life, a family, a neighborhood, a village, and it goes back in thousands of years. Like you go to the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
So if you have the document proving that this village paid its taxes to the emperor, and somebody makes this paper disappear or it gets lost, it can ruin the whole village. And if you're a bureaucrat who can, I know where the paper is. Wait a minute, I think I saw it. Oh, here it is. And you save the village just by finding this piece of paper.
Unbelievable.
And
Native American land here in America, I mean, put a stamp on a piece of paper, sorry, that land is ours.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically how it was taken.
I mean, land ownership is very interesting in this way because before the invention of writing and bureaucracy, to own a piece of land was a communal matter. Like, what does it mean? Think about it. What does it mean that I own this field?
Right.
I mean,
this part of the earth I own.
Yeah, this is part of the earth that belongs to me. What does it mean?
Right, that's so
means
true. Wow, yeah.
that your neighbors, the people around you, agree that this is yours, and they agree by certain actions. Like they don't graze their goats there, or they don't pick fruits there without your permission, because they acknowledge, oh, this field, it belongs to him.
Or they don't let witches collect penises there.
Exactly. That's their decision.
Right, that's
But ownership is a communal matter.
right.
So on the one hand, it limits private property rights. You can only do with the land what the community agrees you can do with it.
Right.
And it also limits the power of a distant king or emperor to say kind of levy taxes on the village, because how can the distant king know who owns what and how much to take? There is no paper trail. Now, then writing is invented, again, 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, and the meaning of ownership changes. Then, in ancient Mesopotamia, suddenly, to own a field means that there is a clay tablet, they wrote on clay tablets, which are basically chunks of mud.
You're right.
There is a chunk of mud that says this field is mine. Like there is an official document, an official chunk of mud that some bureaucrat wrote, this field belongs to Yuval. Stamp, that's it. This is now the meaning of ownership.
Wow.
And it means two things, contradictory in some way. On the one hand, it promotes private property rights, because I can walk around with this chunk of mud, this field is mine, and I can now sell my field to you, even if all the neighbors disagree. You give me a goat, I give you this chunk of mud, now the field is yours. And if the neighbors don't agree, it's their problem. I can enforce this, because this is the meaning of ownership, and it's the same today. It's a piece of paper, or it's a silicon chip. There is some silicon chip somewhere, or there is some piece of paper in Los Angeles County offices or whatever that says this is mine, and this is ownership. So private property rights suddenly become possible. At the same time, also centralized authoritarian regimes become possible, because the king in the capital city now has an archive of all these kind of chunks of mud or pieces of paper that tells the king who owns what. And this is the basis for the taxation system.
Right.
And you can now tax the kingdom and use the taxes to pay soldiers to enforce it. And now, of course, it should be very, very clear it's not all bad. Bureaucracy can do bad things or good things, like any things that we invent.
Right.
And it's very important to understand it, because it's hard to understand bureaucracies. They're a very recent invention in human evolution. Only 5,000 years ago, the first bureaucracy. But the entire world is now built on them. And people find it hard to understand how bureaucracy functions. And this is one of the failures, by the way, of Los Angeles, of Hollywood. They make very few films about bureaucracy. Like you have all these superhero films.
Sexy topic.
Yeah, I mean, they have all these superhero films about Spider-Man and Superman, nothing about accountants.
Right.
Like super accountant that defeats the bad guys by having them fill all these forms and discovering tax evasion.
Right, the Avengers, tax season.
But this is how the real world functions, not with Spider-Man, with accountants. And so it's important to understand that many of the good things in life, they now rely on bureaucracies. So again, I'll tell one story. Today, one of the big conspiracy theories about bureaucracy is the deep state.
Right. Yes.
Whenever I hear the word deep state, I think about the sewage system. Because it's deep, the state built it.
Right.
It's deep, it goes under our houses and neighborhoods and all these pipes and pumps.
Right.
And who knows what's happening there? Like I go to the toilet, I do my thing, I flush it down, it goes into the deep state. And
You're welcome, deep state.
and the deep state protects my life.
Yes.
Because it keeps the shit
It keeps it out. Yeah.
separate from
Right.
the drinking water, at least in places where it works right.
Right.
And this was not so for most of history.
Yes.
For most of history, especially big cities, were extremely dirty and polluted places full of epidemics.
Right, right.
Because, you have hundreds of thousands of people crammed together with their animals and with the sewage and the garbage. It's a paradise for germs. And in the 19th century, the biggest city in the world was London, suffered from repeated epidemics of cholera and dysentery until a superhero came to the rescue called Jon Snow. Not the guy from Game of Thrones, a real-life person, Jon Snow. He was a bureaucrat with a medical background, bureaucrat doctor, and there was a cholera epidemic in London. People were dying. And he wanted to know what is causing the epidemic. Many people said it was something in the air, it was witches, it was the Jews, it was something. And he says, no, it's not the Jews, it's the water.
It was witches, it was the Jews.
And
So
I said,
terrible.
this was the world.
Yeah.
And he
Oh my
suspected
God.
the water. So he went around London. Just anytime he heard about somebody who died from cholera or got sick with cholera, he would rush to the place and interview either the person, or if he died or she died, they would interview the family. Where did you get your drinking water from?
Right.
And he was a bureaucrat. He made lists, hundreds of lists of people and where they got their water from. It's not something you see on a Netflix series, but it was one of the most important discoveries in history. Because when he connected all the lists, all the dots, he saw that almost all the people who died from cholera at a certain point had a sip of water from the well in Broad Street in Soho. And he showed it to the officials of the municipality and convinced them to disable the pump of this well, and the epidemic stopped.
Right.
And then they investigated, and they discovered that the well, just a meter away from the well, somebody dug a cesspit. And the sewage from the cesspit just flowed into the well, and people drank it. And this was one of the kind of key discoveries that led to the establishment of this deep state of the sewage system, that whose main function, or one of the main functions, is to keep the sewage separate from the drinking water. And today, if you want to dig a well or a cesspit in London or many other places, you have to fill so many forms and get all these permits from all these bureaucracies, and it saves our lives. So, and with every technology and all these big inventions, it's never kind of a simple story, it's all bad, it's all good. The question is what we do with it.
What do we do with it? Yeah.
And one final thought on AI, on bureaucracy. This is what we need to understand about AI. That when people hear about the dangers of AI, again, Hollywood, they think about the big robot rebellion.
Right.
The robots will rebel one day and come to kill us.
They're going to take over.
They'll take over. Terminator. And this is very unlikely to happen anytime soon. So people are complacent. The real danger is from the AI bureaucrats. Because we are still some distance away from the Terminator, but we are already...
But we both agree Terminator is going to happen.
At some point could.
I just want to make sure.
If we make the wrong decisions.
Right,
if we make the wrong decisions, yes. But the AIs are now becoming the bureaucrats in more and more places. You apply to a bank to get a loan, it's an AI deciding whether to give you a loan. You apply for a job, it's an AI. We heard earlier, social media, decisions about what news will reach the top of the news feed, it's an AI. It's not a human anymore.
Right.
And AIs are still very narrow intelligences. They can't yet organize the big robot rebellion.
Yet. Right.
But in a bureaucracy, you don't need a very kind of broad intelligence. You can have a very narrow intelligence that is good at only one thing and still have immense impact on the world, like with the algorithms that manage social media. And again, it can be good. I mean, AIs...
Depending on what you do with it, right.
But this is where we have to be very, very careful. what kind of decisions these AIs are already making about our life.
Well, many people involved in AI are very concerned about it. And here's a question I wanted to ask you. Maybe it's predicting the future. I'm not sure. When you think of algorithms, to me, is there like a, I don't know, maybe a harmony or kind of a sameness between algorithms and organisms, you know, when you think about how they operate, you know, because an organism, like a simple-celled organism, there's an algorithm that governs that organism.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you think about an AI, if an algorithm is governing it, is that like an organism? Is that something that can then develop and evolve on its own without interference? And who knows where that could go? Should we be concerned about the growth it can do on its own? Because all other forms of technology requires intervention in order for advancement. Is this the one type that doesn't require intervention in order for it to get out of control?
Yeah, I think this is maybe the most important thing to know about AI is what you just said, that in contrast to every previous technology, it can make decisions and change and learn by itself.
By itself, it's learning.
You know, the printing press, we decided which books to print the Bible, print the witches.
It's very stupid. Yeah.
But it can't decide anything.
Right.
And it's also the atom bomb. But AI can make decisions and learn and change things by itself. And you know, now there is such hype around AI. It's not like the buzzword, especially in the investment world. If you want to sell people something, you say this is AI. Like this is AI watch, this is AI water, this is an AI carpet. Now invest in my AI carpet company.
Right.
And the money starts flooding in. So people are becoming confused. What exactly is AI and how is AI different from all these other machines? Like I have a coffee machine at home, makes coffee. Is it an AI? And it's not. I mean, we have lots of automatic machines. If they only do what they were pre-programmed to do, they don't learn anything new, it's not AI. Like every morning I come to the machine, I press the espresso button, it makes an espresso, that's just an automatic machine.
Right.
It becomes an AI if one morning, like as I approach the machine, before I press any button, the machine talks to me and tells me, good morning, I've been watching you for the last few weeks or months, and based on everything I've learned about you and your facial expression and the way you walk and whatever, I predict you would like an espresso. And I already took the liberty to make the espresso for you.
Wow.
That's an AI.
Right.
It learned something. And it's really an AI if it then the next day tells you, actually, I've invented a completely new drink. I call it Bespresso. You've never tried it before, but I predict you would like it better.
I'm scared where this is going. Yeah. This doesn't taste that good today, Mr. Coffee. Let's go. Just drink it. Just drink it. Yeah.
It's good for you.
Yeah, it's good for you.
It's good for you.
Drink it. Yeah.
But the ability to invent new things. Like, so all the people who say that if you can predict how this technology will develop, what decisions it will make, it is not an AI.
Right. Our fantasy of AI, of course, my earliest one that I remember is 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
You know, how the computer. Now, it seemed that Hal was making, well, we know what it is now in retrospect, but at the time it seemed like he was making a moral decision. He was making like, there's something moral at the center of this. I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't do that. You know, it's almost a moral statement, you know. Is AI, does it have the ability to make moral judgments?
That's a very important and complex question. On the one hand, yes, it needs to make ethical judgments. Like to put a self-driving car on the road, you need to program some ethics into it. Because at least in certain situations, it will have to make an ethical decision. Like if some kid jumps on the road in front of the car,
Right.
and the only way to avoid hitting the kid is swerving to the side and endangering its own passenger, then the car actually needs to make an ethical decision. And you can't avoid it. The question is whether really a non-conscious entity can really understand ethics. And this is where I think that the biggest confusion about the AIs is that people tend to confuse intelligence and consciousness. AIs are highly intelligent, at least in a narrow field. They can beat us in chess. They will soon be able to drive cars better. They can invent medicines that we can't think of. This is intelligence. But it doesn't mean that they are conscious. It doesn't mean that they have feelings. Now, intelligence is the ability to pursue goals and solve problems on the way to the goal. Like you give the car the goal of getting from here to San Francisco, and the car solves problems on the way there. This is intelligence.
Right.
Consciousness is the ability to feel things, pain, pleasure, love, hate. Now, in humans, and also in other animals, in dogs and pigs and so forth, intelligence and consciousness go together. We actually solve problems using feelings. Evolution equipped us with feelings, not as something on the side. This is the main way we solve problems. We make decisions in life based on feelings. So in humans, intelligence and consciousness are really, they go together. And this confuses us. As computers become more and more intelligent, people tend to assume that they necessarily also become conscious, that they start feeling things. Now, and we don't know. At the present moment, we don't have any evidence that computers feel anything. And it could be that even if computers become far more intelligent than us in everything, they still won't feel anything. Like when a computer defeats me at chess, the computer is not happy. It's not joyful. During the game, it doesn't feel anxiety or it doesn't feel anything. If you think about it like, like airplanes and birds. So birds evolved for millions of years to fly using feathers. Then airplanes came along, and within 100 years, they now fly much faster and further and higher than birds, but in a completely different way. They are not on the way to developing feathers. Wait, next year they'll develop feathers. They don't. They are just, you can think about it like two evolutionary processes that never meet. They run in parallel. You have birds, you have airplanes. They are moving along different trajectories. And now airplanes, again, they fly much faster than birds. They don't have feathers. Could be the same with humans and computers and consciousness. That, yes, we, over millions of years, developed intelligence with consciousness. And now the computers are going much faster than us, developing intelligence without any consciousness. And again, I'm not sure. It could be that they will also develop consciousness at some point.
Well, could you make the argument that consciousness, what really maybe distinguishes it, I'm not an expert on this, I'm just saying, but maybe the ability to reflect. To me, like, animals can feel pain, certainly that kind of stuff. Animals can show affection, you come home, your dog's like running at you, that type of thing. But I don't think my dog reflects on why I leave, Like, I don't think it's like, why did he go? I don't know. It's like, this is so weird. He does this every morning. It's like, he just leaves, Like, and I wonder if AI, if it feels, if AI figures out that the only way it can really keep getting better is to have feelings. Like, that's what I'm getting at. Like, will it figure out a way? Because here's the thing. I believe that some of the psychology, like behind getting rid of like bad habits and that kind of thing, they say if you just start saying something, your body just starts believing it, Like, I wonder if that's a thing computers can do. If it starts saying it has feelings, like what if it learns how to be jealous first, Like, jealousy is a pretty easy thing for computers, it seems. I don't know, I'm putting out these scenarios because I'm scared.
You spend more time with your smartphone than with the,
Yeah, maybe jealousy is the first thing that it gets, or anger or whatever, as a way in.
I mean, it can definitely mimic it.
Right.
I mean, again, this is a very big danger today in the world.
And the act of doing that, I'm saying, it believes that, like, in other words, it's like, is anger really real, right?
Anger is real.
Is it though? Like, what is it exactly? Like,
and this goes back to subjective, objective.
Exactly.
I mean, anger is a subjective reality.
Right.
I mean, I don't.
Real for the person.
It's real for the person.
Right.
Nobody else can be sure. I can act very angrily, but you
Right.
can never tell whether I'm really angry inside.
Exactly.
And with AI, it will be the same.
That's my point.
Yeah. And again, this part of the problem is there are very big financial and business incentives to create AIs that mimic feelings and that can get us to be emotionally attached to them. And the AI doesn't really need to have feelings to do that. It can become excellent in faking emotions and faking intimacy, even if it's still completely non-conscious, still feels nothing. And we will not be able to tell.
This is like why sex robots are like taking off in some parts of the world. And I'm guessing that they mimic feelings and that sort of thing, or they'll be able to. Like that's where that's going.
Yeah, from pornography in the sex industry all the way to politics, there are strong incentives to create AIs that can make people emotionally attached to them by faking feelings. Like, if you want to convince a person of something, to buy a product, to vote for a politician, so the most, like the super weapon of convincing people is intimacy. Like previously, we had big battles for attention. Like what we talked about earlier, how you grab people's attention and cause them to talk about immigration or about abortion. This is attention. But what really changes people's minds, if somebody they have an intimate relationship with, could be a spouse, could be a good friend, could be a family member, in a kind of intimate setting, subtly causes them to change their mind. Like there are many things that if I hear somebody on television say, I will just dismiss it. But if a very good friend who knows me well knows how to tell me, I will say, yeah, maybe there is something to it. So like the nuclear weapons of persuasion is intimacy. Previously in history, there was no way to mass produce intimacy. A dictator like a Hitler or a Stalin, he could force everybody to give him their attention. Like you could force every family in the Soviet Union to listen to a radio broadcast by Stalin.
Right.
You got their attention. But this is not intimacy. There was no way to mass produce intimacy. Now with AI, it's the first time in history that you can mass produce intimacy. And what will this do? Imagine that the world is flooded by millions and even billions of these highly intelligent non-human agents that are very good at faking intimacy with us.
That's amazing. It's funny that you said that can change your mind. I think we have a couple of questions coming up, but I wanted to ask this because we were talking a little bit about what's happening in the Middle East and how it seems like, we all know, to me it seems almost like a fatalistic endeavor to try to solve it because it's been going on for so long and the information. But I was thinking about information and your book with that, and how much does that play a pernicious role in what's going on? And as an example, and I'm not, ascribing anything to either side, but I was thinking about this the other day where the word terrorist, as a piece of information, that piece of information allows someone to be killed like without due process. Once that information is tagged, that is very powerful use of a word.
Yeah, and this goes back generations. I mean, throughout the 20th century, lots of governments, again, including the Soviet government, like the word terrorist was popularized to a large extent by the Soviets, who kind of anybody who was against the regime, anybody who was against the revolution was also a terrorist. The same way you have inflation with money, that you print so many dollars that they lose their value. It happens with words.
Yeah.
The first time you use it, it shocks people.
Yeah.
The second time, it shocks them a little less. And when everything, like happened also with the word fascist, that it used to be this kind of the ultimate swear word, was after the Second World War, calling somebody a fascist or a Nazi. This was like people
the worst thing, right?
And now it's like it's so common that it has no impact at all. And the word is completely, its value was inflated until it was completely empty. Yeah.
And do you think there's been too much bad information on both sides in that region where there has to be, and I'm oversimplifying this, so I apologize for that, but it seems like you almost need a period of years where information can change between groups.
The war ultimately, like most conflicts in the world, are not, we talked earlier about objective, intersubjective, subjective. There are almost no wars in the world which are about objective problems.
Yes, right.
Almost all the problems that cause war are intersubjective. They are the result of fictional stories. So again, if I look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, lots of people think, oh, it's about land.
Right.
And it's about food. But it's not. Even though it's a crowded place, the land between the Mediterranean and the Jordan River, there is actually enough land to build houses and schools and hospitals for everyone. There is not an objective lack of food, like there is tiny island, there is just not enough space there, you have to go to the sea. But there is enough space. Also, there is definitely no lack of food. There is enough food for everybody that nobody should be hungry. So why do people fight? They fight about the stories that they have, and this is both sides, they have this fantasy, this mythology in their mind that God gave this whole place only to us, and you shouldn't exist here. And ultimately, I think, and again, this goes to most wars. You have kind of a conflict between the mind and reality. That there is something in reality which is really there that the mind just can't accept, cannot contain. Like you say, no, it doesn't exist, or it shouldn't exist. And war is when the mind tries to disappear from reality, something that it finds hard to accept.
Right.
So again, on both sides. Like you talk with Israelis, and some of them will tell you with complete seriousness and honesty, but there is no Palestinian people. They will tell you with a straight face, completely serious, there is no Palestinian people, they don't exist. Or they would tell you they don't have a right to exist here. They should go to Egypt, to Jordan, to somewhere else. This is ours, they have no right to exist here. And then you talk with Palestinians, they tell you the same thing. Like with a completely straight face, completely serious, they will tell you, what do Jews have to do with the Jerusalem? Like 3,000 years of Jewish history? No. These people, they don't exist, or they shouldn't exist here. They have no right to be here. And again, it's on both sides. You see this simple denial of existence, or the right to exist. And I think the first step towards any chance of peace is starting with just the acknowledgement of reality. That there are 7 million, more than 7 million Palestinians born in this place. They have nowhere else to go. They have a right to exist here. And you have more than 7 million Jews. The vast majority of them also were born in this place. They have nowhere else to go. They have a right to exist here. And now let's sit and talk about where the borders will be and what will be the security arrangement and how to divide the resources. But the first step is this simple acknowledgement of reality. These other people, they also exist. They also have a right to exist. And unfortunately, a lot of minds just block it. No, we don't see. We don't see half of reality.
Well, as you said in your book and everything too, stories are just one of the most powerful things for humans. You know, and that's why another reason why books work, because for some reason we latch onto stories. Stories stick with us longer than anything. The stories you learn as a child stick with you the longest. You know, you be careful what you say to children, right? You know, really, that's why you should never, like they say, don't be so negative to kids, and because they believe the things you tell them. They really do. You know, even offhand comments.
Yeah, the fairy tales and the stories we hear as kids,
very powerful.
Afterwards shape our vision of the world.
Very powerful. Yeah. Well, let's go to some questions.
Dana writes, the science fiction film Forbidden Planet tells the story of the Krell, a civilization that made a giant leap forward in technology, but they couldn't control the technology and were ultimately destroyed by it. Are we, thanks to AI, at the risk of becoming the Krell ourselves?
Forbidden Planet, is that what they mentioned? Yeah. We kind of talked about it a little bit, but yeah, are we at risk of going down that way? Is it,
I mean, the risk is
it human
there.
nature to destroy ourselves?
No, and it should be very clear. Again, this goes back to these fairy tales. And you have a lot of fairy tales and mythologies and theologies that tell us there is something wrong with us. There is something evil in us. And we create things that then inevitably destroy us. And this is a very dangerous message because it causes people to despair, or it causes people to expect some outside help. Humans are evil, so we need some superhuman entity to come and save us. And then you don't take responsibility.
Right.
So I don't think the problem is in human nature. The problem is in our information. Again, if you give good people bad information, they make bad decisions and self-destructive decisions. Now, with technologies like AI, the danger is definitely there. This is the most powerful technology we've ever invented. It's more powerful than nuclear weapons, and because it can invent new stuff. An atom bomb could not invent the hydrogen bomb. But AI can invent the next generation of AIs and all kinds of weapons and whatever. But it's not deterministic. It's not like there is a script somewhere in the Hollywood above the clouds, somebody already written the script for the movie that we are just playing here. No, it's in our hands. We are the screenwriters, we are the directors. If we make the right decisions in the coming years, we can avoid the worst outcomes. And AI has enormous positive potential. This is why people develop it.
Right.
They are, it can provide the best healthcare in the world. It can help us deal with climate change. There is so much positive potential. If we can only avoid the worst case scenarios, this can really be a force for good.
I feel if AI just focused on cancer, I mean, the way that it self-learns, I would imagine, I could honestly see something like that being cracked.
Absolutely.
With AI working on it. That would be amazing.
Carl asks, the titans of industry behind AI are all profit-driven. So how can they possibly be trusted to self-regulate? So it seems to me there needs to be a party independent of those invested in the financial gain from AI to oversee checks and balances, or at least ask questions. Yet the technology is so complicated, how can that entity, even if it's the big government, actually understand the true impact? His own follow-up is, and if it is government, how can we be assured that all governments will agree to the same terms?
So, I mean, you can't trust the companies to just self-regulate. And many of the people who lead them, they're not evil people. They are aware of the dangers. They are, to some extent, very afraid of what they are doing, but they cannot regulate themselves. They are locked into this kind of arms race with the other companies and with the people on the other side of the ocean. So you need governments and you need the public to intervene, but then the question becomes, but we first have to understand a problem. How do you do that? So I think the first step is to establish an institution, an organization, which doesn't belong to a particular company or government. And it's not a regulatory institution. It's just observing and informing the public around the world what is actually happening. Now, for this to function, you need this institution, organization, first to be staffed with some of the best human talent in the world, and to have the budget, both to pay the human talent and also to have the most advanced technology, the toys to play with. At present, the best talent in the world is immediately snatched by the big corporations that can pay salaries far beyond anything the academia or the government can. And it's not just money. I mean, many of these people are just fascinated by the technology, and they want to play with the latest toys. And the latest toys are in Google or in OpenAI or in Baidu or Tencent, so this is where they go. So to have a serious chance of really informing the public, and not just in the US, I mean, there is an even bigger problem elsewhere around the world, because AI will have different impact on different countries. The US is likely to become far more wealthy and powerful because of AI, whereas other countries could completely collapse. Their economy could completely collapse. So how do you inform everybody? And we need this kind of international organization, and we can have an agreement between governments to finance this kind of, again, it's not a regulatory institution. It's even before that. It's just finding out what is happening and informing the public so we can start having a real conversation about it. It's not a pipe dream, largely because everybody around the world is concerned about it. At least there are certain problems. There are certain issues that you can never get the Americans and Chinese to agree or to trust each other. But there are problems which are common to both sides. For instance, the control problem. One of the biggest problems with AI, you create this super intelligent agent. How do you keep it under your control? Now, this is a problem for the Chinese and the Americans, for the Iranians and the Israelis. Nobody wants an out-of-control AI. It's not good for anybody. So this is something that you can have more cooperation on. And theoretically, I don't know, if Chinese scientists find they have a theoretical breakthrough or a practical breakthrough, how do you solve the control problem? They have a deep interest in sharing it with the Americans and vice versa. So we can start by looking for the areas of common interest and working on them and hopefully building enough trust there that you can then expand it to the more complicated areas.
I think we should be more concerned about Chinese using AI rather than AI using the Chinese. Right? I mean, that to me seems like a bigger, bigger concern.
Again, but everybody is afraid of the potential of getting out of control.
Right, but out of control government, let's say, using AI in the wrong.
This is also extremely dangerous.
More of a concern.
But on this, you'll have a much bigger difficulty agreeing.
Exactly. Right.
So I'm saying, okay, let's start with the easier problem.
Right.
And build from there. And yes, I mean, if you want to have an agreement about limiting the production, let's say, of autonomous weapon systems, the Terminator, the killer robots, this is going to be much, much more difficult because each government will suspect the other for good reasons. That, okay, they signed the agreement, but how do we know they are not doing it in some secret laboratory?
Trust and verify.
What changes do you think are necessary in our education system to better prepare future generations for an uncertain world? And do you think AI has a role in that?
Does AI have a role in our education system to change the world?
AI can be very helpful in the education system in many ways, at least, again, to teach specific issues. If today you have, I don't know, a classroom with 30 or 40 kids in it, with different abilities, different ways of learning, different understandings, and a single teacher needs to teach the same thing to all the 30 kids, and she or he, they don't know each kid personally, and they can't teach, they can only say one thing at any moment. So it's difficult to, if one kid thinks mostly visually, and another kid is more of a word person, what do you do? Now, AIs can help solve it because you can each kid can have an AI tutor that gets to know that particular child and kind of tailor the pace and the type of explanations to that particular child.
Right.
However, if the education system goes too far in that direction, it loses maybe the most important thing in education, which is how the social interaction. We already have too much loneliness and too much distrust in society. So maybe the most important thing that children learn in school is not during class, it's during break time, of how do you interact with the other kids, how do you learn to trust people. And this is something we saw with COVID, for instance, that with all this social isolation and learning from home, there were some, far from ideal, but at least some solutions for class. But there was no solution for the break time.
Right.
And this is where we feel the greatest pain of the aftershocks of the epidemics, of the epidemic. It's in the mental health, in the social health, that people who are isolated, not just kids, also adults, for weeks and months, and okay, they could still study math, but they lost the ability to play with the other kids in the school. So we have to be very, very careful when we introduce AI into the education system to remember that social intelligence and emotional intelligence is perhaps now more important than ever, because the only thing we know about the 21st century is there is going to be very rapid changes in everything.
Right.
So if you think, okay, I must focus on teaching kids how to code computers, because this is what they'll do in 20 years. Nobody has any idea. Maybe in 20 years, AI codes computers so well, you don't need any human coders. So all this narrow investment went to nothing. What they will definitely need is emotional intelligence, how to deal with an extremely rapid change in society.
Also, AI could be involved in individual curriculum for children. My son is on the spectrum. He has Asperger's. And one thing I learned, when you have a child in that situation is that every child learns differently, but it's just more apparent when you have a child that's on the spectrum. And if there's an ability for different types of curriculum within the same classroom where kids can have the social interaction, but with AI, you have really the ability to almost tailor curriculum to individuals almost.
Yeah.
Like everybody doesn't have to learn the same way.
Exactly.
Right, but they can be in the same,
They can be in the same space.
Right.
You have an hour that you learn from the AI,
Right.
Mathematics, and different kids learn different things, and then the hour is over and they all play together.
It could be interesting, yeah, who knows, yeah.
Clara asks, when does information become knowledge? And how do we account for translation and interpretation and sharing information or knowledge?
When does information become knowledge? Really good question, yeah.
So when most information is not the truth, information is very different from knowledge. And you need to work hard to process the information. Again, most information is junk. It's like you have a huge pile of junk and you're looking for the nuggets of truth, of the precious knowledge in that junk heap. And ultimately, the only answer is institutions. I know that institutions are not popular, that people, today we have a kind of wave of distrust in institutions. But humans this is the answer we always come back to. Like I talked earlier about the printing press, that it did not lead to the scientific revolution. What did lead to the scientific revolution was the very slow and complex creation of scientific institutions, like academic research centers, like academic publishers, that they developed the skill to tell the difference between reliable and unreliable information. What evidence I can believe and what is suspect. And then eventually it was the academic publishers, when they got a book or an article about witch hunting, they say, the evidence is not convincing. I know this will sell, but I'm not publishing this because I have a commitment to the truth and to knowledge. And then they got this kind of very boring treatise with mathematical equations about the movement of the planets or whatever, and they say, yes, this is the truth, we'll publish this. And this was the foundation of the scientific revolution, not the printing press. The printing press was helpful, of course, but it was only when you have these institutions. And today, one of the problems that, one of the biggest problems in societies all over the world is distrust in institutions, which is fed by a very cynical view of humanity, which is prevalent on both the right and the left. You hear from people on both the right and the left that you cannot trust institutions because they are all conspiracies, cabals to gain power.
Right.
There is this view that like humans are these power-crazy demons, that they only want power, and whether it's newspapers or universities or courts or any other institution, this is just some elitist conspiracy to gain power. And whenever they tell you something, you should ask whose privileges are being served, whose interests are being served by this. And this suspicion, it destroys trust in all institutions. And when all trust is gone, the only thing that still keeps going or could hold society together is a dictatorship. Because dictatorship doesn't need trustworthy institutions. Dictatorships works on terror. Now, the important thing to remember is that it's just not true that all humans just want power. The only thing they want is power, that all human interactions are power struggles. Yes, humans want power, but this is just one aspect of human beings. They also want the truth. There is a deep yearning for truth in humans. If you go really deep, it's because if you don't know the truth about yourself, your life, you can never be happy. because you don't know what are the true sources of your misery. And then you spend your life trying to solve the wrong problems. So humans have a real deep yearning for the truth. And this is true of even powerful people, even editors of newspapers, even scientists, even judges, even politicians. Yes, they are sometimes corrupt, and this is why we have all these mechanisms to checks and balances. But we should start with a more charitable and generous view of humans, that there is a real desire for truth in these apes, in these beings. And one last thing, I mean, how do you get to knowledge? So for instance, I'm a historian, and I spent 10 years in university basically learning how to sift through the kind of heap of information and tell the difference between reliable and unreliable information. Like some people think, oh, historians, what they learn is these long lists of names of kings and battles. No, they don't. What historians go to university and they learn for years and years is how do I tell the difference between reliable and unreliable information? How do I know what happened in the 15th century during the print revolution in Europe? You need to learn the languages. You need to learn Latin and Greek and kind of 16th century German and English, which was different from English today.
Right.
You need to learn how to write handwriting from 500 years ago. And of course, you need to learn the difference. Just the fact that I found a book from the 15th century that said that witches stole penises from men. Is this true? Does it mean that in the 15th century there were really witches that stole? No, just because there is a paper from the 15th century that says it doesn't mean it's true. Now, how do you know? This is what you learn for 10 years. And this is also true of newspaper editors. You want to be a newspaper editor, you usually learn. You go to journalism school, and then you start as a simple journalist, and you slowly make your way up the ladder. And now, unfortunately, again, we have people who have no background in this, and they are managing the largest media companies in the world.
Right.
And when you tell them, you know, you should not advance all these conspiracy theories and fake news, they honestly tell you, but how can I tell the difference? How can I know if it's true or not? Well, if you can't tell the difference, you're in the wrong business.
Doris says, in the United States, the First Amendment technically blocks the censorship of misinformation. John Kerry has suggested or floated a proposal about an idea of something called the Ministry of Truth.
It's not the business of the government is already the most powerful force in society. Making it also in charge of the truth is a very, very dangerous, proposition. Yeah. Again, this is checks and balances. You need the whole idea of, in dictatorship, all the power is concentrated in one place. You know, this is dictatorship, one person dictates everything, this one person dictates also what is the truth. In a democracy, the whole idea is a conversation between many people, institutions, organizations. And the government is the most powerful institution of all, so it should definitely not also be in charge of the truth. This is why we should have free press, and we should have academic freedom, and you should have independent courts, that each of these institutions is in charge of finding out the truth about different aspects of reality. Like, was a crime committed? So judges are the experts on finding the truth about that. The latest news from yesterday, this is the job of newspapers. What happened 500 years ago? This is the job of historians and archaeologists and so forth. And of course, again, there are problems in all these institutions because they are made of humans. And this is why you have many institutions. If you have corruption in the courts, so the media can publish it and can raise a public outcry. If there is racism in the newspaper business, so this is the job of sociologists or anthropologists to do research and show, look, there is a racist bias in the media. If there is a problem in academia, so again, you can go to the courts. And what happens if all of them are corrupt? Well, you know, nothing is perfect. People don't know how to build a perfect society.
Right.
We have to start with the assumption that everything is fallible. We do our best, This is, again, why we have these multiple institutions and checks and balances. If all the power is concentrated in one place, it's very easy to corrupt it.
Yep.
If it's spread between many institutions, we have a fighting chance, let's say.
Yes. Well, I think we've learned some valuable things today. Number one, what do witches do in their spare time? And number two, any, journalist of a paper worth their salt's going to end up being a dictator, I think. But thank you so much for joining us. Yuval Harari, guys.
Thank you.
It's a book about the long-term history of information networks, from the Stone Age to the age of AI. The idea is to understand the long-term processes that shape information networks and to learn from previous historical revolutions about what is the same and what is different, what is new about this revolution. We can learn a lot, for instance, from the process of the canonization of the Bible, about the process of canonizing AI, the fantasy of creating an infallible information technology that will always tell us the truth and that will be able to solve all our problems. It's of course a very old fantasy in human history. And looking at what happens previously when humans follow this fantasy can tell us at least some things about what is happening right now. The book is really about trying to understand the current AI revolution from a very long-term historical perspective.
Every year, more than 1 million people die all over the world in car accidents. Most of them are caused by human error, like people drinking and then driving or falling asleep at the wheel or whatever. Self-driving vehicles are likely to save about 1 million lives every year. This is amazing. You think about climate change. So yes, developing the AIs will consume a lot of energy, but they could also find new sources of energy, new ways to harness energy that could be our best shot at preventing ecological collapse. So there is enormous positive potential. We shouldn't deny that. We should be aware of it. And on the other hand, it's very difficult to appreciate the dangers because the dangers, again, they are kind of alien.